While boarding the plane, the flight attendant asked, "Did you say goodbye to everyone important?" "It's just a 3-hour flight to Seattle," I said, confused and slightly annoyed. Then she grabbed my wrist and leaned in closer. "That's not what I asked. Did you say goodbye? Really say it? The kind where you tell them things you've been meaning to say?" Then she grabbed my wrist. "Lady, you're hurting my arm," I said, and finally she released me, but not before pressing something into my palm, a folded piece of paper. "Seat 23F, she whispered. "Watch the man in 23F, and whatever you do, don't volunteer for anything." She plastered on a fake smile and greeted the next passenger like nothing had happened, leaving me to stumble into the plane with my heart racing. My seat was 14A, a window in economy. I shoved my carry-on into the overhead bin and sat down, unfolding the paper Patricia had given me. It was a photocopy of a news article from 1987. 7 missing after flight 447 emergency landing. Investigators baffled. The details were sparse, but apparently 7 passengers had vanished during what the airline called severe turbulence over Montana. No bodies were ever found. "Heavy reading for a flight," said the woman settling into 14B. She was probably mid-60s, wearing a University of Washington sweatshirt. "I'm Ruth," she offered, extending her hand. I shook it, introducing myself as David, while trying to discreetly look back at row 23. A heavy-set man in a wrinkled business suit was wedging himself into seat F, already sweating despite the cold air blasting from the vents. As more passengers boarded, I noticed Patricia having intense conversations with specific people. She'd check their boarding pass, ask them something that made them look disturbed, then move on. A young woman in military fatigues got the same treatment, as did an elderly priest, a teenager with a skateboard, and several others. Each one looked shaken after talking to her. The captain's voice came over the intercom, but it wasn't the usual cheerful welcome. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Morrison. Welcome aboard Flight 447 to Seattle. We're aware of the unique conditions today. Crew, please prepare for Protocol 7. The flight attendants exchanged glances that looked like barely controlled panic. Ruth nudged me. "Protocol 7? I've been flying for 40 years and never heard of that." I was about to respond when the plane lurched forward, pushing back from the gate with unusual urgency. Through my window, I could see ground crew members stepping back quickly, some of them crossing themselves. 20 minutes after takeoff, cruising at 35,000 feet, everything seemed normal. The drink cart was making its way down the aisle. People were reading or sleeping, and I'd almost convinced myself that Patricia was just having a mental breakdown. Then the temperature dropped. Not gradually, but instantly, like we'd flown into a freezer. Frost started forming on the inside of my window. The plane shuddered, not turbulence, but something else, like we'd hit an invisible wall. The lights flickered and died, emergency lighting casting everything in a sick green glow. People started screaming. The man in 23F stood up shouting, "Not again! I won't do it again!" Patricia rushed to him, pushing him back into his seat, but he was sobbing now, repeating, "Not again," over and over. Captain Morrison's voice cut through the chaos, steady but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've entered what we call a temporal pocket. This is the 847th time Flight 447 has encountered this anomaly. We need 7 volunteers, or we all repeat this loop forever." The cabin went silent, except for the sound of the engines, which had taken on a weird harmonic that hurt my teeth. A man in first class stood up. "This is insane. You can't be serious." But Patricia pulled out an iPad and started showing him something. Whatever was on that screen made him sink back into his seat, face white. She moved through the cabin, showing select passengers something on her screen. Each one who looked had the same reaction, horror, then resignation. "What happens if no one volunteers?" Ruth asked loudly. Patricia turned to address the whole cabin. "Then we crash, over and over. We've been through this loop 846 times. Each time, if 7 don't sacrifice themselves, we reset to take off and do it again. Everyone on board retains their memories of the previous loops after about the 20th repetition." My mind was reeling. This couldn't be real, but the man in 23F stood up again, more composed now. "I'm Marcus Henderson. I've been on this flight 17 times, trying to work up the courage. I embezzled $8 million from a children's cancer charity. 3 kids died because they couldn't afford experimental treatments." He walked toward the front of the plane. The elderly priest followed. "Father Timothy O'Brien. I protected pedophile priests for 37 years, moved them to new parishes, silenced families." His voice was steady, resigned. "I've been riding this flight for 6 months, knowing eventually I'd be chosen." One by one, people started standing up, not randomly, but specific passengers, like they'd been marked somehow. The teenager with the skateboard couldn't have been more than 16. "I set the fire," he said, voice cracking. "The apartment building fire in Portland. I was high, thought it would be funny to light some trash on fire. 11 people died." Ruth grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug in. "This can't be happening. This is mass hysteria or something." But I could feel it too. The wrongness in the air, the way reality seemed thin and brittle around us. The frost on my window was spreading, forming patterns that looked almost like faces. Patricia was standing by what looked like a service door, but when she opened it, instead of explosive decompression, there was just nothing. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below.